Now let's talk Chelsea. Up for sale, up to 10 parties considering making bids. Most of the interest coming from the USA. Let's get some expert opinion from Luke Hildyard, who's the director of High Pay Centre. It's an independent think tank focused on the causes and consequences of economic inequality. Good afternoon to you. Let's start with the basics. How do you react to the news that Abramovich wants to sell Chelsea?
Yeah, well, I think it's very welcome. It might not seem obvious to your viewers, but there is a link between Russian money in London, which is then used to purchase football clubs, plus mansions, private education at British schools, and the oligarch system and all the death and suffering and horror that we're seeing in Ukraine at the moment. The way it works is that Putin enables the oligarchs to extract vast wealth at the expense of the Russian people in exchange for their support and cooperation with his regime. If the oligarchs weren't able to then use that wealth, living it up in London at football matches and elsewhere, they'd have less cause to give that support, and this key component of the Russian governance system would have been weakened. So from my perspective, it's a shame this didn't happen a long time ago, that Abramovich didn't come under this kind of pressure over his links to the regime previously.
So are we looking at the end of the current situation, the situation we've seen for the last 20 years or so, where there is so much Russian money floating about in the UK, particularly in the London area?
Again, one would hope so, and it would be a very good thing if it did. Certainly the banks, estate agents, lawyers that have benefited from Russian money are going to come under a great deal more pressure to scrutinise who they are taking money from, what's the source of their wealth, who's ultimately owning and benefiting from the companies that they're working with. And as I say, that would be very welcome. And I hope it'll extend much further than just Russians, promoting greater transparency about the business activities in the UK of entities from all around the world.
Do you think there's anybody out there who'd be willing to pay £3 billion, whatever it is, for Chelsea?
Really good question. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty about the future of football more generally, with the Super League debacle and the changes to the Champions League ahead of us. Putting £3 billion in the pocket of an oligarch with close links to the Putin regime is something that many people will be wary of. Personally, what I'd like to see happen is the club being put into the hands of the supporters, a Chelsea supporters trust or some kind of equivalent, along the lines of the way most clubs are run in Germany. Obviously, you'd think it would be difficult for that kind of model to access the funding that Chelsea have had from Abramovich, and their recent success has probably been contingent on that funding. But Chelsea were a pretty decent team even before they had the Abramovich money, and I think their true long-term fans might find it a bit more enjoyable and more satisfactory to win the occasional trophy organically rather than to be winning every season as a result of what Arsene Wenger called financial doping.
It's not going to happen, though, is it?
Well, who knows? I mean, we live in pretty uncertain times. There are lots of things that people wouldn't have predicted 6 months, 2 years ago that have come to pass. So I think, it's unlikely, but you asked my opinion on what would be the sort of appropriate way forward, and I think that would be the best way.
Will it be difficult to do a deal if Abramovich is looking to do a straightforward sale, which, as far as we know, he is? What are the difficulties that confront him with that?
Well, again, that's why I was just talking about a sort of supporter-run model. You rightly said it might seem quite unlikely, but I mean, it's only the system that works in Germany, which is a pretty sort of successful, functional, well-run economy. Conversely, doing a deal with Abramovich is obviously going to be immensely complicated, owing to the sanctions that are applying to all the different components of the Russian economy, and that is likely to put off a number of potential buyers, particularly when you combine it with the uncertainty around the football governance regime that still exists.
And I think you hinted at this a minute or two ago. Some potential buyers might be put off by the whole idea of doing business with a Russian oligarch just now, not necessarily only on moral grounds, that could be part of it, but also it might have a potentially damaging effect from a business point of view.
Exactly, yeah. It's not a great look to be doing business with Russian entities, particularly those perceived to have links with the Russian regime. So reputationally, that could be problematic. I think just practically, with the sanctions on Russian banks and business entities, it might be very difficult to actually do the deal. And then morally, is putting money in the pocket of a Russian oligarch the right thing to do? Abramovich has actually said he will be donating any net proceeds from the sale to support victims of the war in Ukraine, but that's not a legal commitment, and his words on that were pretty open, so we can't be sure what exactly he means by that.
If it is to be a standard deal, whatever that means in the current circumstances, does it seem likely that it's going to be somebody from the US, person or persons in some kind of syndicate, who are the likeliest buyers?
They seem to have been the rumoured parties so far, and logically, the US is home to more billionaires than any other country. There are many that have big interest in sports. We've already got a number of clubs in the UK owned by US parties. I think it's a bit of a shame that football has become so much about billionaire owners. You had the Chelsea fans chanting for Roman Abramovich during the remembrance for the people who've been killed or injured in Ukraine. I'd rather that football fans were chanting the names of players and managers, and football got back to being a sporting competition rather than one about who can attract the most billionaire money.
Just over 2 months till the end of the season. Does your gut feeling tell you Mr. Abramovich will actually still be the owner by that point?
Very difficult to say. I think it's hard to be optimistic about the situation in Ukraine, and that makes his position incredibly difficult. I would hope that people with links to the Putin regime would be under immense pressure and would be, one way or the other, wouldn't be having their money in English football much longer. And one would hope that beyond football, in the business world more generally, the relevant authorities would be taking a pretty hard line with Putin's associates. But it remains to be seen.
Luke Hildyard from the High Pay Centre, thank you.